Record on this computer. Hi, my name is Christy Guadarrama, and I am a senior, and I will be graduating in May. And this is my letter to my fiance. A little bit of background: my fiance during the pandemic was in prison, and it was very hard to communicate. It was mostly by letter, and so what we call that is snail mail because either he would get my letters really late or I would get them really late, and it was hard to express what I was going through or what I thought people were going through or express any other worriness or sadness or depression because of his situation. So I kept most of that to myself. I never really expressed what I thought, what I felt. I just kind of went by the wing of things all the time and just let things be the way they were for a really long time. And now that I'm able to write this letter and tell him exactly how I feel and reference a couple of articles that I read in this class really has helped me be able to grieve that person and be okay with that and move on with my life and not still worry about who I was back 3 years ago rather than who I am being now. And here is my letter. It says, Dear babe, first I want to let you know that I thank God for putting you into my life and answering my prayers. You have you have now been home 3 years. These past 3 years have not been easy for us, but we have gotten through the rough times together. It has not always been this way. There are a few things that I kept from you while you were in prison. I never wanted to tell you what I really was going through during the pandemic. The reason I never said anything was that I knew that you were going through a lot yourself, and I knew it got worse during the pandemic. Knowing that you were considered an essential worker and were needed, it was hard for me to say anything. At this point in time, I need to let go of what I was going through in the pandemic and grieve that woman. I chose to write to you because you were my best friend, and I want you to know who I really am. I had recently read a few articles about cutting during the pandemic and humanizing acts. The authors speak about grieving loved ones and that pass, to grieve losing oneself and not being ashamed of it. They also speak on how one should be kind to oneself and others. The articles also speak about how difficult it was for people to cross the border or even support themselves as vendors, how teaching became an obstacle during the pandemic. One of the writings also speaks about how migrant workers were the most vulnerable, but yet the least protected by anyone during the pandemic. Life was not easy for me. I went from having a room to sleep in to sleeping on a couch because my sister and her family needed somewhere to stay. Waking up on a couch every day for 8 months just made me depressed. I felt like a failure. I questioned my life every day and wondered why I was even still breathing. It did not help me. It did not help that I went from being a school on campus 5 times a week to not at all. I was really sad and depressed all the time. I smiled in front of my family and pretended that I was okay when reality, I was dying inside. Classes were hard for me. In Dr. Urbano's piece, he speaks about how we had to show not just one another kindness, but also oneself. That it was okay not to be okay. There was nothing to be embarrassed about. It took me 2 semesters to get used to Zoom and learning that way. I want to I want you to know that you were one of the reasons why I kept going. One of the reasons why I did not tell you what I was going through was because I knew you would worry for me and it would make things harder for you. I knew I needed help and I needed to speak to someone that would help me. So I did. I started to see my therapist twice a month and had medications adjusted. I started to open up to my family and started to take care of my health. First, it started with me working out in my house and running in my backyard. Then it started to be safer for me to walk around my neighborhood. You and my babies were the reason I fought every day to be better. And slowly but surely I did. But I want you to know that I did not do it by myself. God was with me every step of the way. He held me when I felt my lowest, and I will forever be indebted to him. I love you so much, and I want you to know that I will fight each and every day to be at my best mentally and physically. I want you to be my best. I want to be at my best for you and my family. I'm sorry for keeping this from you, but now I did this to protect you. No, I did this to protect you. I love you, babe, and to the moon and back. Sincerely, your penguin princess.
Oh, um, Your letter felt so real. Like it felt like you were actually like, like letting out your feelings. Um, and I bet it was hard. And, like COVID was hard for him as well and for you guys as a relationship, like not being able to communicate. But I liked how you actually put in the readings because you actually like got like lines from the reading and associated it with your letter, and it just fit really well. Like you did it really, really well. Everything was put together very good, and yeah, like I don't know, I don't have any like bad comments for your letter. It just felt so real, like so um like eventful, what you were going through, and I hope this helped you like express your feelings out, because I know it was hard to write my letter, so I think maybe writing this letter helped you out like in a way to like let your feelings out. But yeah, I enjoyed your
Hmm.
letter.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, well, my name is Ariana Merida. I'm a psychology major. I need one more semester in Cal State Fullerton to graduate, hopefully. Um, and what else? Um, 23 years old. So, my letter
You're
was
a
for
baby.
myself. I know.
You're as old as my
My,
daughter.
oh, I probably know her.
Mm,
Um, I did my letter to myself. I felt like for my own experience, I did have like eventful moments, but I chose myself because I felt like COVID like made me lose a part of myself. So in a way, like I related like the readings. I think it was grief, um, to my letter because in a way, like I grieve who I was. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes
mhm,
sense, but that's how I took it upon. So yeah, this is my letter. So I put, Dear me, in the year of 2019, no one imagined what would happen. I graduated from high school this year. I was starting to experience new things. I was starting to go to new places. There were many things on my bucket list I wanted to do. I started college this year as well. I was a freshman in Santa Ana College. I was eager to know what the future was holding for me. I was amazed by college and thrilled to learn. College was completely different from my high school experience. I was able to finish my first semester in community college in person. I remember telling my mom I actually like college and I enjoyed learning. I like my classes and I enjoy my major. In the beginning of 2020, many things changed. I did not finish my second semester of community college in person. I felt like everything went downhill from there. My professors were trying their best to keep in touch with all of us online. Some held Zoom classes, others just posted on Canvas. I lost interest in school because everyone was lost. I eventually ended up dropping some classes. I still wanted to go out with friends. I was not keeping others in my mind. I was not worried about my family's health. I was young and I did not realize all the pain that would come from COVID, mentally, physically, and emotionally. Eventually, in September of 2020, I got COVID. I was the first in my family to get COVID. By that time, there were many people who had COVID. There were many people dying and many loved ones suffering. After I got COVID, everything changed. I isolated myself from the outside. I would only go out to work and come home. Eventually, COVID affected me mentally. I felt sad most of the time. Doing the same routine every day was boring. I never realized how my social life affected me in a positive and negative way. Not being able to have a social life affected me. I missed my friends and family. Once the pandemic was controlled, I was scared to come out. I was worried about getting COVID again. COVID changed my personality. Being inside my home and not interacting with others affected me. I became shy and less social. I am not as outgoing as I was before. I tend to I tend to be more to myself than to be with the crowd. It was such a stressful situation. I used to work at a fast food restaurant at the time. I remember work would be so slow. I would work less than 15 hours a week. I was I would stress every day not knowing if I would become jobless at any time. As of now, I reflect on how I was affected by COVID. I always wonder how it would have been if the pandemic never happened. How would I be mentally? Would my life would my life's timeline be different? I am beyond blessed to be alive, although I did lose a part of myself through COVID. I also gained a new side of me. COVID is part of worldwide history. Everyone has a different story to tell. I also lost a few family members. Sue Cron Miller defined humanizing acts as written or articles pieces that include how the United States and Mexico borders borderlines were affected by COVID. It states that it can be stories from loved ones, friends, and families. So I wrote my own. I wrote a letter to myself and shared how COVID impacted me. Each of this, each of the letters written by Alice Giovanna Teriquez showed the grief she is going through. She stated how grief is not the absence of love, but love adjusting to its new container. That is a interesting way to talk about grief. COVID is all about grief. People grieve their loved ones. People grieve how life used to be. I grieve my old self.
I really like your letter. I really like because
Thank
doesn't look
you.
like you're a vulnerable person or act like a vulnerable person. You look like a very like, just straight, like you don't tell people how you feel. You don't tell people that you're sad. You just kind of push along. And I think like this letter opens up a side of you that you didn't even know you probably had. The side of like, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to say goodbye to that person and know that you're a different person now, 3 years later after COVID. Like, I feel that because you're so young, um, it affected you differently than it affected me because like uh I didn't do anything in COVID. I didn't leave my house. I became very reclusive while you were still like out there like, like, hey, I'm young. I'm gonna go and have fun with my friends. And now when you see it differently, now that you're a little bit more mature than you were because you're about 18, 19 back then probably.
Mhm.
And so like now that you see things differently, now you realize like that was like a big mistake not taking care of yourself or protecting others because COVID was real. Like people like really didn't think anything of it. Like I remember my friend, she caught COVID before it was even diagnosed as COVID and she was really sick and she caught it multiple times. Like, but that was for the same reason. She's in her 20s and she would go to the club still, she would go drinking, she would go she would go and party and not taking into consideration. And I think that's a generational thing. Like that's where people are thinking like, hey, like I'm young and this is not really happening because we didn't know, right? And now that you see it and now that you've heard not just from yourself and experience yourself, but our classmates and experience and hear their experiences, I think it makes you a lot more mature, a lot more like, hey, like I messed up, but I'm okay. And now I'm doing better. And I appreciate that because not everyone can sit here and say, like, I made a mistake, because a lot of people will still say, like, oh, it was just COVID. It was just the beginning of it, not a big deal. And you're like here saying, no, like there's a reason why I I am where I'm at today, and I'm proud of that. And I'm proud of you for that. I'm proud of you for being vulnerable, for letting like, because obviously a total stranger that we don't really know. I mean, I love you, professor, but he's gonna read these letters and he's gonna and he can, like you said, he can't judge us on our personal experience, but he can see and he will like he'll see that the real side of you that we don't really see, if that makes sense. And I'm really
Yes.
proud of you. I really love your letter. I really, really enjoyed it. And I wish you the best in your career, because part of being a psychology major, do you want to be like a psychologist? Is being
I want to be
vulnerable
a
to
social worker.